Between 2007 and 2011, the Office of the Children's Registry, OCR, recorded over 25,000 reports of child abuse. However, of this total, less than 1% of those reports were made by children. This public education specialist at the OCR, Trevisa da Silva Ashman, said was woefully inadequate, and that's why the agency felt that there was a need to devise programs that will encourage more children to report abuse.
We felt that in order to get one of the measures that we could use to get more children to report directly is to use their own peers to encourage them.
The OCR recently launched 2 programs which it hopes will assist in getting more children to speak up and speak out about child abuse.
The jingle competition, for example, children will be invited to submit a 30-second jingle encouraging persons to report child abuse. And the Child Ambassadors program, we would invite children to apply to become an OCR Child Ambassador, where they can actually come with us on our public education activities and encourage other children to report child abuse.
The Office of the Children's Registry says getting reports from prescribed individuals such as teachers, church leaders and doctors is not an issue, as that makes up the bulk of its data. However, the agency is cognizant of the fact that children do speak to each other about issues affecting them and are therefore likely to tell a friend about instances of abuse.
One of the challenges that we have heard from the children themselves is that when something happens to them and they tell an adult, someone who they usually feel they can trust, sometimes the response that they get is somewhat of a disbelief. Persons would say to them, "You're too lie, you're not telling the truth, that person too nice, they wouldn't do that." And we've actually heard cases of children saying that I told my mother, I told my father, and they didn't believe me, and so the abuse continues. So we're trying to get to the stage where every child is aware that they can report directly to the OCR and they know how to do so.
Francesco Wilke is a child representative with the OCR, and he thinks it is important for children to speak out about the issues that affect their lives.
When adults mostly report, shows that children take less interest in reporting. So if we could get more children to report, it would mean that children are aware and they're protecting themselves.
He says children can relate to each other, hence their power to influence the behavior of their peers. And that's why he believes the OCR's move to have children encourage other children to report child abuse will be successful.
Adults are different from us children. Children understand children better. For example, if you were to tell your child to go sweep the backyard or else he's not watching TV, the child wouldn't do it because it's like, why? But if your friend says, why don't you go do it? The person will know that, okay, my friend knows what's right and is trying to help me, so let me just do it. So that's in a way where children are more spooky to other children.
Even though children are being encouraged to come forward and report abuse, parents are being reminded to be vigilant and pay attention to some possible telltale signs.
There are a number of categories. One is what we call a regression in development. So a child who was what stopped bedwetting may start bedwetting. A child who was normally sleeping quite nicely in their room is now clinging, want to sleep with the parent. Child who maybe wasn't sucking finger all the time is now sucking finger all the time. So you have regression in development. You have a change of behavior, which you alluded to, where a child who was normally very bubbly and lively now becomes very introverted or withdrawn. And sometimes they also become irritable, aggressive. They're acting out the aggression on other children or to mommy. And you may have the flip side, where a child who was normally very docile, very compliant, will do whatever you want, now becomes very aggressive and just very defiant. Okay, so a change in behavior from what the normal is a child. Sometimes the children start sexually acting out what they have experienced. Okay, so they may introduce their classmates, sometimes the younger ones or sometimes the ones their own age, to some of the behaviors that they have been exposed to.
The child psychiatrist says parents should also look out for physical symptoms that may be signs of a bigger problem.
We as adults in Jamaica don't talk much about our feelings. We say we have a stomach ache or we have air in the head or our nerves or whatever. So sometimes the children too have these vague complaints like stomachache or headache. You do a number of tests and you can't find out what's wrong. You may have other more specific physical signs like a vaginal discharge or a urinary tract infection.
Dr. Leiber also points out that parents should encourage their children not to tease victims of abuse.
From the children we see in the clinic, that sometimes a child may have been like gang raped by a number of boys at some other location. And if that gets back to the school, sometimes the whole class ends up teasing the child, torturing the child, and victimizing the child, making this child feel even worse than how she feels, okay? And I really want to make a plug for our children to realize that having been raped is a terrible thing, and they should be comforting and consoling and supporting each other as opposed to teasing and tormenting each other.
There are several ways to report cases of child abuse to the Office of the Children's Registry. You can call their toll-free line at 1-888-776-8328. Email them at report@ocr.gov.jm. Call or text 822-7031 or 878-2882. You can even send the OCR a please call me message and they will call you back.
For far too long, children have been the target of child abuse, and it is time for it to stop. I condemn those abusers who continue to rob children of their right to grow up in a safe community. Children are the future, so let's all pledge to care and protect, not harm and neglect them.
Everybody needs to play their part in the fight against child abuse. For Live at 7, I'm Kenil Gale.